Welcome to Objective Health. Hello, everybody. I am your host, Tiffany, and joining me in our studio, we have Doug and Elliot.
Hello,
Hi, guys.
Hello.
So today we're going to talk about the coronavirus. If you haven't heard about the coronavirus, then obviously you've been living under a rock for the last month or so. It's been working its way around the world and scaring the pants off of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I noticed, though, just recently, I was watching some videos on coronavirus and on YouTube, and you type in coronavirus in the YouTube chat and you get this little pop-up from the World Health Organization. And it comes, let's see what it says. Whoops. Sorry, let me just put it in here. So when you put coronavirus into YouTube search box, you get coronavirus, and then it has a link to the World Health Organization where you can get the latest information about the coronavirus here. So I was thinking about, did they have this up when Ebola was out, or Zika virus, or any of the other viral scares that we seem to get every 1 or 2 years?
No, I don't think so. I think that they've started doing that kind of thing recently. I've noticed that anytime I go to watch an RT video, there's a message underneath that says it's funded by the Russian government.
Yeah.
And I think that they've, this is more of their ways of battling disinformation.
Yeah, but why would this one in particular?
Well, I think it's anything that's kind of a contentious topic. I mean, the fact of the matter is,
I've typed in Ebola and Zika and other viruses into the YouTube search box, and coronavirus is the only virus that gets this special treatment.
Yeah.
So I just thought I wanted to point that out.
I think it's just because there's a lot of people freaking out about it right now.
Yeah, but I think part of it is also there's a lot of crackdown on free speech lately. And you know that if there's something that you can't criticize, and you know that there's probably something more behind that, and you should look a little bit closer. Yeah. But at any rate, we're going to talk about the coronavirus today.
Yeah.
I've heard it also referred to as the Kung Fu flu. I like to call it the Wu-Tang virus myself.
Wu-Tang virus.
But apparently we're supposed to call it COVID-19 right now.
Yeah.
So that is the coronavirus's new name. So I guess if we're going to get into this, we should probably actually talk about what actually the coronavirus is. What's the symptoms? What do we have to be afraid of? I've heard alternately that it's super contagious, and then it's no worse than a common cold.
Yeah. Well, from what I understand, the symptoms are dry cough, fever, shortness of breath, nasal congestion. After a few days, they tend to experience fatigue. After a day or so or more, they may experience nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, and loose stools. So it sounds a whole lot like the flu. But yeah, I mean, I guess I kind of can't blame YouTube for putting the WHO page up, because there is wildly varying information out there. Some of it, is very kind of measured and seems kind of like, okay, nobody freak out, this isn't really that big a deal. And people keep on comparing it to the number of deaths you see from the flu every year versus what you're seeing from coronavirus. And on the other hand, you have people talking about, no, this is actually really bad. It's much more virulent than people are letting on. The numbers are not reflective of what is actually happening. And So it's hard to know exactly what's going on and how much we really should be freaking out about this. Well, I guess you can say you shouldn't really be freaking out about it because generally, if you're not living in China, the numbers are not that high. Just some off the top of my head. I just had an Al Jazeera article up. Damien, maybe you could pull that up. But the numbers are like the highest outside of China, I think, is Japan. If you include the cruise ship, the Diamond Princess, that is docked there at the moment, because they have apparently 355 cases on board. Mainland Japan has about 57 cases. Singapore's got 75. South Korea 29. And then China has 68,567. And worldwide, I believe the total number of deaths have been, the last numbers I heard were 1,665 deaths.
Yeah. Yeah. The site I'm looking at has 1,666 deaths. Ooh.
Oh, one died since I got my numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it seems like, for the most part, it's Asian countries that are, and it makes sense. I mean, if it's all centered in China, then their neighbors are going to be the ones that have kind of the most. There's a couple of Western countries. Canada has 8. Germany has 16. France 12. The U.S. has 15. Vietnam is Asian, but it has 16. So.
And I mean, that's a pretty low percentage of total cases yielding death, causing death, right? So it's pretty low mortality rate, like all things considered. And as per my understanding from a lot of the stuff, a lot of the information about the people who are generally dying from this, it's generally afflicting the elderly. So people with like pre-existing conditions, they are more likely to die in a similar kind of way as the flu. Like, you know, the people who die from the flu are generally people who've already got existing health conditions, low immunity, poor nutrition. Maybe they're in nursing or care homes. It's generally the elderly kind of thing, right? And that's not to say that all the people from the coronavirus are elderly, but actually it seems that the majority of the people who are dying from this are the same kind of population. They fall into the same demographic as the people who generally die every year from the flu, right? So it's not like it has like it's some killer virus that, you know, wipes out kind of 90% of all people it infects. It's like,
no,
the mortality is pretty meager.
Yeah, and it's not wiping out people in the prime of their lives either.
Exactly.
It does have a higher mortality than the flu, though, in general. I mean, if you look at the total numbers, like, you know, the flu kills hundreds of thousands of people every year, and coronavirus has only, like, you know, 1,600 deaths so far or something. But if you look at the percentages, coronavirus is at about 2.2%. That's the estimated mortality. When you compare that to the flu, which is about 0.1 to 0.2. So it does seem like it's killing more people, but it doesn't seem like it's as contagious, maybe. Certainly the total numbers aren't as high.
Again, with the flu, you have to consider that they've been massaging the numbers for flu deaths for years.
That's true, yeah.
So you can't, I mean, who's to say what the real number of flu deaths? I think in the U.S. they say something like 30,000 or so a year, but they lump flu deaths in with deaths from pneumonia or other upper respiratory infections. So you can't really say for sure if it's the flu. And plus, the CDC is known for making up numbers out of whole cloth anyway. So
totally. I mean, they want to sell vaccines, right? Yeah, the only reason I think that maybe the numbers for the coronavirus might be a little bit more accurate, although obviously there's other things coming into play there, but they don't have a vaccine. So they're not necessarily trying to bump those numbers at this point.
Well, another thing to consider too when you're speaking about accuracy is how are they confirming these cases of coronavirus? Are they actually doing lab tests and then this lab test? Are they actually identifying the viral particle, or are they looking for some kind of antibody response, like they do with other kind of viral tests? So that also makes me look at the numbers again kind of different. Like, are they just diagnosing people based on symptoms, which, they've been known to do, like in every virus scare that we seem to get every year or two? Not all of these people are confirmed with laboratory testing.
No.
Yeah, there were numerous testimonies of people on the ground in China. I'm pretty certain having said that actually they don't have the resources to be able to test and fully diagnose everyone. And so actually, if someone presents with the symptoms, they'll tell them, right, go home. You've probably got this. Kind of.
Yeah, go home and quarantine yourself.
Yeah.
Well, they have that. Is that a Japanese cruise ship?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if it's Japanese. It's parked in Japan right now. I think parked is not the real word for it. Docked.
Yeah, so there are all these people basically are quarantined on a cruise ship. And how many cases of coronavirus do they have there now?
355.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, are they sending lab samples out to be tested someplace? Do they have the lab there on the ship? Like, are we 100% sure that all the people on this ship actually have coronavirus?
It could be food poisoning.
Yeah, it could be norovirus. That always breaks out on cruise ships. So who knows? I'm looking at this thing, kind of skeptically, because there was the Ebola scare that came out a couple years ago. There was the Zika virus scare. There was SARS and MERS and coronavirus right now. So they had the measles scare that shows up. So it seems like every couple of years or so, there's this new thing that we're supposed to be afraid of. So that's just one of the things that makes me suspicious that this is probably a nothing burger and will probably blow over. However, I'm not saying that I don't think that there's a possibility for a pandemic or something to break out, but I think that if it did, it could probably be blamed on the coronavirus, but really it's attributable to something else.
Like a different virus?
Or no virus at all. And it's 5G. Just, look through history. Like, say with the polio virus, spread by poor sanitation. You could say that about different illnesses that swept through certain populations throughout history. So say with polio, you had cases of wild-caught polio. They went up for a while. Say you had some improvements in sanitation, then the number of cases went down, and then they introduced a vaccine, and then suddenly the number of polio cases increases again. So if you would apply this to coronavirus, say they introduce a vaccine after things kind of like naturally die down, the hype dies down, and the vaccine causes people to shed some other particles, and that is actually the source of a pandemic, not necessarily the wild coronavirus on its own. That's just my little conspiracy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not an unfounded conspiracy, because I mean, we were talking before on the show about how there was what was it? Polio. The polio vaccine was responsible for more cases of polio than the wild virus at this point. So yeah, I mean, it's not that outside the realm of possibility.
And we know that giving a live vaccine often, as you just said, Tiff, but this seems to be the case for many of the vaccines, that actually it causes you to shed live virus.
Like with the measles.
Yeah, I mean, you could quite easily cause the spread of even if it's like just a minor version of it. Who knows? But
Mhm.
actually, you could quite easily contribute to it at least.
Mhm. Well,
Well,
do we want to get into some of the other alternative theories about
yeah,
coronavirus?
that's where I was just
Because
about to go.
apparently this is caused because people eat bat soup in certain Chinese markets. Or there's been articles that have come out because of the different foods that they have in these street markets, like snakes, bats, whatever that people might eat. There's some other slithery thing that they're trying to blame it on now. I guess we could apologize to the animals up front because it seems like whenever there's a virus throughout history, they're always like blaming the snakes or blaming the green monkeys or the chickens or the mad cows or the rats or the fleas on the rats. So we can just apologize to the animals up front because they always seem to get blamed in these viral outbreaks. However, John Rappaport, he has a series of articles out where he explores the possibility that in Wuhan, where this broke out, that city is known for its monstrous levels of air pollution. And people have been complaining for years about it. People regularly wear face masks because the smog and that can be very, very bad there. People have been having respiratory distress for a long time, and people were protesting. So John Rappaport's take on it is that the government is blaming a virus, notably the coronavirus, for something that is caused by the significant amount of air pollution in the city.
I don't know if I buy it.
Nah, me neither.
I think
But
that you wouldn't have cases showing up in other countries where they're
Mm-hmm.
actually confirming it, doing the testing, confirming that it's actually coronavirus, if there was no virus, if it was all just
Right.
air pollution.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. Rappaport's take on a lot of things I agree with, but this one, I don't know. I think he's off base on this one.
yeah, it doesn't really account for the sudden onset of things as well, right?
Right.
Yeah.
This unless like there was some kind of nuclear radiation facility or some new chemical processing plant, which was like ultra toxic, which was just started running in the past couple of months, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
How could you differentiate between now and last year?
Yeah. Why now?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the effect of pollution on the body, it generally doesn't cause those symptoms, right? It might cause cancer, might cause kind of autoimmunity. It could make people sick, but generally it's not going to happen all at once, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's not going to be like a sudden onset. And like you said, Doug, it's like, okay, we need to take all facts into consideration. Yeah, maybe it's been a little bit overblown. Maybe there's a lot of things that we don't know that's going on here. But at the same time, we can't just deny the personal lab experience, the medical experience of kind of thousands of doctors all around the world who are all seeing kind of the same thing, unless they're all in on one big conspiracy and it's just a lie.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, come on. We need to kind of align with what is most likely true. And it seems that actually when we factor all things considered, it doesn't really help to explain it.
Yeah, I agree. The other possibility, and this was floated by, I believe it was a scientist from India. And actually, Damien, maybe you can pull up that article. It's called "Coronavirus Came from Meteorite, which hit China last year." So this guy has been kind of studying this aspect for a long time. The possibility, probability, in fact, of some viruses at least actually coming from meteorites, because viruses apparently can survive space travel, and so and apparently it happens all the time that these viruses actually ride in on comets or meteorites. There's actually a really good article up on SOC called "New Light on the Black Death," and it was basically looking at the possibility that the Black Death, the plague back in medieval times, actually came from space. And there's relatively good. I mean, it's a theory, But there's really relatively good evidence. It does seem to explain a lot of the factors that the idea that it was spread by rats doesn't really seem to cover. Now, one criticism of this guy's theory is that he's trying to pin it on one meteorite in particular that hit China last year. And even his own model doesn't really account for that, because what he was saying is that, in previous articles, he had stated that what actually happens is they end up in the atmosphere, and they can stay up there for years, and they can mutate or they can combine or do whatever it is viruses do, and they don't necessarily get down to ground level and reach humans for years, decades, centuries even. So trying to pin it on a specific meteorite, it seems a little bit unlikely. But nonetheless, it's not as much as it sounds like science fiction. That there actually is a very real possibility that this is actually where it came from.
Yeah, and the point is made is because, like, highlighting that China generally tends to be, for whatever reason, like tends to be like a hub of these weird viruses, right? So there's been multiple different ones. Not so much Zika, but SARS, MERS, what is it, hand, foot, and mouth. There's been a couple of other ones as well, which were said to kind of originate in China, and they generally point the finger on the fact that they eat a bunch of weird stuff, right? Or stuff that we don't eat in the West, kind of like bat soup and stuff. Whether they do actually eat that, or whether that's just a couple of like the odd
extremists.
Yeah, extremist kind of thing. I mean, I don't know.
Racist.
There's some Chinese people who say that, like, bat soup, you can't find it anywhere, and it's just like a really random thing. But that said, this idea that actually China, because it's essentially bordering on like the Himalayas, it's north of the Himalayas, that actually maybe because of the thinning atmosphere, I don't know much about kind of the geophysics or whatever, but apparently there's a thinner atmosphere around the Himalayas, and that might be one of the ways that it kind of is getting through. Yeah. But there's also this idea as well. I mean, I was reading one theory. It was talking about how actually these viruses potentially may have been, say if they did come on some kind of a comet or a meteorite or something, and then say this was a couple million years ago or 100 million years ago or whatever, actually depositing in the glaciers as well, right? It completely froze over. But then with things kind of the climate changing, as things are changing in different parts of the world, you have some glaciers like melting, and actually what that might be doing is unleashing some really kind of exotic cosmic virus, which we have not actually come into contact with as a species, perhaps, for maybe our entire evolutionary history kind of thing. And so there would be, very little way to kind of effectively deal with that. But I don't know about that. It's an interesting concept kind of thing, but who knows?
Yeah. Well, there's also...
Well, how about the bioweapons angle?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say as well. James Lyons Wheeler is a scientist, and actually maybe Damien, you can pull up that article. It was called "On the Origins of the 2019 nCoV virus, Wuhan, China," and it's actually it's a very good article. It is very technical and very scientific. I'm not going to pretend that I understood it all, but he actually goes through different scenarios and kind of talks about their probability. Whether which ones are likely, and he kind of talks about the Wuhan market and it coming from the important thing is actually that he's actually studying the genome of this thing. He's actually looking at the genetic factors and determining things, what's most likely and what's not likely. And he said that the option one is that it's a natural coronavirus related to bat coronavirus and not a recombined virus. And he said that this is a falsified hypothesis. So the idea that it came from bat soup or animals of some kind is falsified, not true. The next possibility is that it's a recombined virus that naturally picked up a SARS-like spike protein in it. And etc., technical talk. He says that one is very unlikely for scientific reasons that I don't pretend to understand. What he does say is that a recombined virus made in a laboratory for the purpose of creating a bioweapon is a possibility. And he kind of brings in some of the evidence for that. There was the scientist who was booted from Canada for sending viruses to China or something like that. You guys familiar with that story at all? It was like,
yeah, the female scientist, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's Chinese and was working in Canada at Canada's only level 4 lab in Manitoba, Canada, and was fired for violating protocols, allegedly sending samples of the deadly virus to mainland China. There's also the fact that, this isn't really like necessarily a fact, but the whole angle on this that I've seen is that people are saying that, because there's this kind of economic war going on between the U.S. and China, it's kind of like not out of the realm of possibility that they would maybe hit them with this to try and cripple them economically. And one of the things that kind of makes you just rub your chin a little bit on this is that it kind of coincided with the celebration of the New Year, the Chinese New Year, when everybody's going to be traveling, going home to see their families. It's kind of like if you wanted to spread a virus very quickly in China, it's kind of the perfect time to do it. So there's a lot of kind of circumstantial evidence on that.
Well, wasn't there another article going back to the bioweapon angle that there were similar genetic inserts on the coronavirus's RNA that looked like HIV? And that's one of the reasons why one of these scientists thought that it could have been a bioweapon, because there's no way in nature that kind of unique insertion would occur.
Yeah. The thing is, I haven't heard anything else about that. Now, either that's because it got hushed up very quickly, because it was Indian scientists who discovered that, and it was a non-peer-reviewed study. So it got a lot of flack for that reason. And I haven't seen anything further on that. And this scientist, James Lyons Wheeler, doesn't talk about that. He actually talks about how there are SARS insertions in it. And his actual theory, his fourth theory, that bioweapons one, he said is possible. But his theory is actually what this is a vaccine. That they were doing experimental vaccines, maybe even were doing human trials on it, that basically had escaped. And he's basically saying, looking at the genome, looking at the insertions that are in there, it looks like it was probably some kind of coronavirus vaccine to, try to protect, probably against SARS, and what's happened is that they're shedding now. These people who were vaccinated by it are shedding. The other possibility is that this James Lyons Wheeler has said that previous studies on trying to make a vaccine for SARS or coronaviruses, when they do it in mice, they tend to be more susceptible to wild virus after that. And they tend to be have no defense against it and die from it. So he was basically saying that this might be the possibility. It's kind of what he sees as being kind of the most likely possibility of where this thing originated from.
Well, another thing that kind of makes all the conspiracy theorists rub their palms together and cackle is that was it 3 months ago? There was a researcher at Johns Hopkins who ran a simulation, and they happened to use coronavirus. And the simulation showed that it would kill 65 million people.
And Bill Gates was behind that, right?
Yeah, Bill Gates was one of the backers of his studies, and it was a collaboration with the World Economic Forum and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Just the type of people you think would be interested in viral pandemics.
Yeah.
But at any rate, they were behind it. So people are always talking about, oh, that's the same thing that happens with false flag attacks. They always do some kind of simulation beforehand, and then it happens for real.
Mm-hmm.
So
I feel like if Bill and Melinda Gates were behind it, they would already have a vaccine.
well, I think that that's probably one of the things we have to wait for.
Yeah.
They're gonna try and come out with the vaccine. I think I've read some other reports of them thinking of using the Ebola vaccine that's still in trial and try to use it on coronavirus victims
What,
or
really?
people who don't want to be coronavirus victims. We'll have to see. I don't know. I think there's so.
Can you do that though? Can you just take any random vaccine and say, "Oh, try this one"?
Hey,
maybe this will
work. It's a virus. It's a virus. They're all alike.
Maybe try the tetanus
bacteria.
vaccine.
It's a virus.
Maybe the measles vaccine will work against it. Well,
it's all the same, isn't it?
Yeah. So why don't you get a vaccine?
Well, another thing that's interesting about the coronavirus is the social ramifications, like actually putting people into quarantine, going around door to door. I mean, that's strange. That's different.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. Is this a practice
this is
run?
The biggest quarantine that's ever happened on the planet, as far as we know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that separates this scare from the other scares. I mean, there's been some other like quarantine, like with Ebola, like trying to avoid certain people and building special facilities where you can treat them. But I don't think we've ever seen this level of quarantine before.
Probably that has a lot to do with the fact that it's China. And that they're able to kind of mobilize and get shit done quickly. Like their response has been like a lot of people, a lot of journalists are giving them flack and stuff and saying, oh, they didn't respond quickly enough and blah, blah, blah. I don't think if this was spreading in North America, you would not see this level of, control, I think, anyway.
Yeah, don't forget that China's a communist country.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I mean, building a hospital in like a week, like that's pretty impressive.
Communist countries, they have the real foot ahead as far as like social crackdown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true.
And being able and actually having people go along with it and support the system.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to see how far this goes. But I stand by my prophecy that if this does grow into something big, it will probably be under the guise of it'll probably be a vaccine-caused epidemic, not a regular wild epidemic or pandemic. We'll see.
Well, what can you do about it? If you do get coronavirus, what can you do about it? There's a study now. It's a trial being done. I think it's actually in China, if I'm not mistaken. They're using like mega doses of intravenous vitamin C. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure that there was like a couple of confirmed cases which show that actually it worked. Yeah. There's a couple of different antiviral kind of like concoctions and stuff that they're giving, but I mean, I could be wrong about the vitamin C.
No, it's true. Yeah,
it's true. Yeah. They have killed it.
Yeah, they've done it was like a small trial or something like that. Not very many people, but found that it was effective against it. I don't know if it cured it outright, but it was basically like took people from dying of it to recovering. But yeah, vitamin C, I mean, even the what are they called? The I can't remember. Like a functional medicine group of some kind basically put out an article saying like, don't freak out about this. You should protect against this the same way you would the flu. Taking your vitamin C regularly, vitamin D as well, selenium, zinc. like the same kind of things, the kind of things that will kind of protect you from any virus should work against this as well. It is a virus, so. But yeah, intravenous vitamin C, I'm sure, is a very effective means of combating it.
Oh. So,
And in fact, in China, they were listing off a few Chinese medicine herbs and stuff that they were using for it. Now, I'm not familiar with any of them because they were all Chinese names, but just the fact that that there is kind of a rich history of herbal medicine in China, and they are using it to kind of to help with people who have come down with coronavirus. And India's using homeopathy as well, which they're taking flack for, of course.
Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see.
We will.
Just like with all the others. Okay, so unless there's anything that anybody wants to add to the coronavirus or COVID-19, we will wrap up this show for this week, and we will see you guys next time with another show. So be safe, wash your hands, and don't sneeze on anybody if you can help it. Oh, and if you like this video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and leave a comment. And we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
See you next time. Bye-bye.